Welcome back at it again with another episode of CoogsTalk brought to you by Coog TV. I am your moderator and host with the most, Sean Paul, here with
Joseph Mosbey.
and
Iain Bell.
well, we have an exciting episode for you, so let's not waste any time and let's get right into the action. So, the Houston Cougars men's basketball team. It has not been a good stretch for the team as of late. They've dropped their last 3 games, first time losing 3 straight, all against ranked teams. They lost away to Iowa State at Hilton, lost to Arizona at home, and then got kicked in the teeth by Kansas at Allen Fieldhouse. I mean, interior's not working, just plays are predictable. Like, what do you guys think is just going on with this team?
Well, obviously, we were talking about it earlier, but of course, it's the stretch. Obviously, just the way the scheduling is. Of course, like we knew that the big games were going to be in here, especially the Big 12 being the best conference out of all of college basketball. This was going to bound to happen. That obviously top tier teams out of all of college basketball, giving us an early preview towards March. As you know, as again, Iowa State, Arizona, and Kansas, all legit teams that can make a legit run within March Madness this year. For, I think, just interesting takeaways from the 3 games that we had lost. From the Iowa State game, we had the lead, but obviously towards the end is kind of when we had kind of just like let it slip through our hands. I did notice too an interesting occurrence. Like I know before the 3-game losing streak, we were actually technically the game before Iowa State was Kansas State, and we were technically losing to them. And although they were more bottom of the Big 12, obviously I think the cracks were going to come there. And of course, when you play these big teams like Iowa State, Arizona, and Kansas, it's going to happen. I feel like also going into the next game, the Arizona game, we kind of lost because Arizona just came out a lot more quicker than we did. But we were super behind, and they just kind of won it as soon as the tip-off began. And then Kansas, they just, although we managed to do some good work defensively speaking. I mean, Kansas was in their own arena. That place is bumping whenever the home team's always there, and so. Yeah, I just feel like it's just been a scheduling issue. Not I should say like blame it on the schedule completely, but obviously it's a big deal just to playing 3 teams back to back that are going to be top tier teams, and they're always going to not just only provide body blows, but the big knockout punches for your team. And I think that's why Houston's in a little bit of a down stretch right now.
Gotcha. And honestly, follow you up. Shout out 4 quarters if you wanted. We've been diving into it every week, so we're following very closely. I was there in Allen Fieldhouse at that game. It was a crazy experience. I think one thing that you mentioned, it's always hard to beat Kansas in Kansas, but also Bill Self is undefeated in his tenure.
Right, 41-0, correct?
41-0. That's not a game you go in expecting to win, but the fact that they put up that much of a fight, if you look at Coach Sampson after the interviews in the post conference, he was proud of them because people were talking about, it's a bad skid, bad this. If you look before the Kansas State game, U of H was ranked top 10 in the nation on both offense and on defense. This team is playing well, and honestly, I think seeing them playing that well, we have these super high expectations. Now we're understanding how much wear and tear is on these players' bodies, and going on that back-to-back stretch of back-to-back big Mondays. You're going to Iowa for the big Monday. Come back. You don't practice until they didn't get home until 2 a.m. and then you practice on Wednesday. And you only get Thursday to really try to work your kinks out, and then you're back into facing the number 1 team in the country in Arizona. And then 48 hours later, you're in Allen Fieldhouse playing Kansas. Like that's not normal.
Physically exhausting, I think
I would
say.
Yeah, and that's what Coach Sampson said. He actually subbed Milos and Emmanuel, your 2 leaders on the team, because they couldn't go anymore. I mean, he said this morning, Milos is dealing with 2 sprained ankles, a lot of injuries, and that's what he's announcing. So imagine the things that are going on behind the scene that he's not announcing. I think we, as fans, we want to say, the world is over, right? But the world is not over. He said it himself the best, right? Everything you were looking for in the season is still on the table. You can still go in 2 weeks and win the Big 12 championship. You can still go in March Madness, ranked number 1 or number 2, and go on a crazy run and go back to the national championship. They have risen above expectations. We can't have our expectations meet them there and just continue to support and push the team along. That's how I feel about it.
Okay. What do you guys think's not working tactically? Because obviously, like you said, the Kansas State game, like early on, it exposed some cracks in our system that teams could exploit come March.
I mean, I could go first on this because I haven't noticed it quickly. The beginning of the season, the bigs were eating. They were both averaging double digits. They would dump it off. But another thing I think that caught people by surprise was how good Kingston Fleming was at the dribble drive penetration. Now you're looking at all the games, you're seeing a lot of traps. And they're Kingston, as good as he is, he's a smaller guard, so they're bumping him, and that dump off isn't always there like it was last year. Last year, you look at the team, it was a 42% three-point shooting team. This year, we're shooting about 35, I believe. You don't have the same jump shooters like you did last year, so it's been harder to find that offense. It's why I believe you're finding that cold stretch. I speak my own personal opinions. I remember talking to Daniel and Kenneth about it while we were in Allen Fieldhouse. Maybe Coach Sampson should look into finding a way to, one, keep the guards out of foul trouble. Emmanuel Sharp has been in foul trouble for the past 3 weeks straight. But also keeping the guards fresh. And it feels like sometimes they're stepping on each other's toes because the spacing's not the same. That's just something I would feel.
I see kind of sometimes too is I know that with the high expectation of having 42% on the three-point line last year and having like about 35 and only just being above average slightly, that I see that when like Emmanuel Sharp's taking his shots, like I saw it a lot more predominantly in like Arizona. It just seemed very forced. Like when they develop out a play for him, like he's very smooth with the shot and he's able to take it. He's able to knock down the even the more contested shots when it's really properly set up. But when you're kind of forcing it on him, I've noticed it too, that he's not really being the same, and sometimes there's like too much contested shots that I saw a lot. That because another big thing as well, Arizona, the game that we had, we went 10 minutes straight without scoring a single basket, and obviously it's just kind of spreading out the ball. I know again we're a little bit more small ball as well. And another thing I had also noticed too, just in generally too, is of course the big difference of this year's team 2025, 2026 than compared to last year 2024, 2025 is of course the experience level. Of course Emmanuel Sharp is the only kind of real true veteran, while the rest of the people are a little bit more newer, and so they're trying to, of course, adapt to this and, of course, how to play basketball, because basketball is a very long-term sport where it's very, when you get to this end of the stretch, you're super tired, and again, like you mentioned before, they barely had any rest, and they're super exhausted. That sometimes how to adjust to that, though, I think it's another thing that kind of is, would say, reasonably why we lost 3 in a row, because obviously the culture that we have here is set high. That's why, we're like, people may press the panic button like right away. But I do feel it too, that just the spacing and as well, just it seemed a lot more forced. It's not as smooth as it has to be. And of course, I know when teams pick up on, hey, they're doing well with, the small ball with Kingston, let's, rattle them up a little bit though. So it's a good, I think it's also good, kind of a wake up call, because of course it's better to fix the kinks now than try to do it in March when there's just like no time to little time at all.
Yeah, and to continue on what you were saying, this is the youngest U of H team that we've ever seen under Kevin Sampson. You're highly reliant on 3 freshmen. One of them, you're running your offense through with Kingston.
Exactly.
I believe that they decided to do this. You listen to some of Coach Sampson's interviews. They knew Kingston was going to be the best player on their team back in June. Right. But it leaves a weird spot because that was supposed to be Milos' role, and he had to adjust to learning how to play off ball, catch and shoot instead of leading the offense. And so now that Kingston's flaming, it's just a weird adjustment. Right. You're having to feel it out. A lot of freshmen doing this, and I think personally, what we're seeing is just like, okay, now the game plan's out. Now they're gonna have to adjust, and on top of the adjust, they're battling injuries and all these things. And but one thing I don't know if we didn't mention it. A big part of the offense being lost right now is Jawan Roberts. He's Mr. U of H basketball, the winningest player in history at University of Houston. Right. And you lose that experience of someone who can score at will and run an offense through the paint. And you want Chris Sinak to be able to do that, but unfortunately he hasn't developed to that level yet. At the same time, Isaiah Harwell didn't play the entire summer because of a knee surgery. You expected him to come up and replace people like Malik Wilson and come in to be able to catch and shoot, but he hasn't taken that step yet. There's a lot of like what ifs, but I also think it's teams like this, when the pressure's on and the tournament comes on, they shine. Right, you see the real talent start to shine through. And Coach Sampson is probably the most, I'm going to say, he's a Hall of Fame coach.
Absolutely.
One of the best, smartest coaches in the Big 12, in the country even. So when it comes down to the nitty and gritty, he's going to get his own.
Right.
You know what I mean? So.
And also, too, you pointed out JoJo's injury as well. That's another big thing to highlight, too, because, of course, he plays that defensive role as well. And obviously, the big defensive stance that we could have had, like against Kansas, obviously, because we had some momentum in the beginning of the Kansas game, but then once they had it in the second half, they just had it, and obviously his presence would have helped out a lot more. And especially too, I know he played in the other 2 games, Arizona and Iowa State, but obviously defense as a whole, because I know Sampson does like to point that out. I think he says it. He didn't take out defense on a date is like his reference when a player's not on the ball with it though, and obviously. Again, it's the second half adjustments that are going to come to be, but obviously the Big 12 tournament's always, a spot that Houston always does shine, always does go further, where there is always a full platform for them to, reach the, where they are supposed to be at, being, Big 12 conference champions and as well potential national champions.
Yeah, and additionally on that JoJo's comment, one thing that Coach Sampson, he said it, he didn't want to say it, but admittedly, the team is a lot better when he's on the court. Not just because of defense, but also his athleticism, his length, his IQ. He's a really smart basketball player. And the offensive rebounding is a big part of U of H's offense, if you haven't noticed.
Right.
And he's leading the country, I believe, in offensive rebounds. So, yeah, it's something we should look forward to in the Big 12 tournament in March Madness.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like that paint is gonna be, if we need our paint issues, because like Chris and Mack, he's getting bullied by all these big centers, and like as you said, we don't got a Jawan Roberts, a polished center who can enforce the paint at will. So yeah, the paint is gonna be a problem, because if we have to go against someone like Michigan, Duke, or Zona again with all these big men in the paint, it's gonna be lights out.
Don't sleep on Sacco though.
Yeah,
he's like that.
Yeah, Sacco said left. They wouldn't be bad options.
Obviously, we got good centers coming along the way too. Mania too. We did sign the number 1 center, in the recruiting class. Right. So there is potential, but obviously, of course, I think this is a really cool experimental year that can really go pretty far, obviously, from what we've seen.
And well, that was part 1 of this Cougs Talk. Stay tuned for part 2, where we talk about the NFL offseason, from quarterbacks to the draft and all that good stuff. I'm Sean Paul, here with
Joseph Mosbey
and
Iain Bell.
And we'll see you next time. And remember, whose house?
Cougs House.